Who are we? Well, I'm Bernie. I'm a retired senior executive from the trucking transportation industry, former classmate of my partner in crime, Dick. And we hope to provide a senior perspective to people of all ages on the current events of the day, and also some anecdotal stuff and some humor, I hope.
Okay, I'm Dick. I'm 74. I'm a retired military officer. After leaving the military, I taught high school for 15 years, basically psychology, and I'm not happy the way the world is going. Hey, Bernie, I'm going to start off today because a lot of our readers, listeners, have been interested in blasts from the past. So today is a blast from the past. It's going to be quick, but it's going to be a quiz. What is that?
That looks like one of the original desktop computers of old.
Yes, it is. And it's a K-Pro 2, which I bought in 1973, and I connected to the mainframe of the U.S. Army at 300 baud, which is a thousandth of what we transmit now today. You had to load each program individually with a 5 1/4 disc. And I got one. Yeah, so I got one sitting in my garage, but that's how computing started. Now, it operated on the CP/M operating system, and everybody else was going with DOS, and I said DOS would never make it.
I remember
Microsoft
DOS.
was $2 a share, so I lost out on that. Okay, are you ready for number 2?
I should add that my wife Kathy was really good at DOS, and I never quite figured it out. I always had to rely on her.
Well, I used to program in DOS, but nobody does it anymore. Okay, what's this?
I don't know, a garage door opener?
Okay, prior to today's streaming on iPhone, we had what's called the Sony Walkman, and it was a combination transistor radio, and what you did, I got to figure out how to open it. In those days, open. In those days, music was downloaded on these.
I remember.
And you stuck it in your Walkman, and you wandered down the street with these on your head.
Right.
No iPods, no nothing. Everybody thought it was going to last forever. Didn't. It died, and it went away.
Those earphones were long before earbuds came in.
Yep. Now, after that, we came up with this. What is it?
So one of those kind of mini tape recorders?
Close. It's an iPod. And what you did, the internet was just coming on board, and you downloaded what were called MP3 files. You loaded this on it, and you walked around instead of carrying the big thing. You had this.
And I had one of those, so I'm ashamed that I can't recall, but now I had one of those.
Okay, and then that died, and the CD came in.
Oh my God.
Yep. And the problem with this was, first of all, everybody thought these would also last forever, but they didn't. They died out within about 3 years because they were too big, and streaming off the internet was providing more music than having to buy CDs and all the rest of the stuff.
So Dick, if all these technological devices are dying right and left, how come we're still kicking?
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing, because you see, after the big discs died, we went to these.
Yes.
And these died. And what happened is people went to streaming, and if they wanted to download and store something, they put it on this,
Thumb drive.
a thumb drive, right?
We've
So,
got a
we've
few
gone-
of those laying around.
We've gone from big, huge machines to little things to hell with the whole thing. Everything's on the cloud. Everything's over the internet. Everything's on our cell phones. So we don't need any of this stuff anymore. And that is our blast from the past.
So just further to that, before we segue to other topics, think about TVs. You know, you talked about that last podcast, podcast 4, the rabbit ears and having to stand and move those around or put foil on them to help with the reception. And I think of the big screen TV I have, and all of our channels now, we don't even have cable TV anymore. It's all through live streaming.
Yep, Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
know, that brings up an interesting point, because we had TV, one channel, started off with the national anthem, ended with the national anthem, on for maybe 8 hours a day. And that's the way it was. There were no, well, I was the remote. I'd go up and change the channel. We didn't have remotes.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, it's Tito.
It's Tito, my bud.
Hi, Tito.
Uh,
Okay,
Dick knows
so while
this,
you're
but-
playing with Tito, let me just throw in the one political comment of the day. You
Okay.
know, you got a lot of liberals in the United States who are now down on Israel. And they want Israel to back down, stop the war, do this and that. What these idiots don't seem to realize is Israel didn't start it. Hamas started it, firing some 4,000 missiles into Israel. So, you know, I don't understand what these people are thinking.
Well, maybe I'll make a comment and then back up to yours. Can you explain to me, because I'm at a total loss? We often talk, or I do, about the majority of Black voters still voting. It's like a Pavlovian response. They vote the Democratic ticket time and time and time and time again. Thank you, Tito. And in the context of what you're talking about, the same is true of Jewish voters. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why the majority of Jewish voters vote Democrat. In fact, I don't know, other than if you're an illegal alien, you know, who can honestly say, or a rabid leftist, who can honestly say, I vote Democrat because the Democratic Party has my interests in mind? Any intelligent person has to realize that the Democratic Party has long abandoned them, and their self-interests are at stake if they vote Democrat. And to your comment, here we have Hamas, a terrorist organization, bombing the hell out of Israel, and we have Jews being attacked all over the country by what are being termed by the media pro-Palestinian protesters. But they're anything but protesters. In my mind, they're terrorists and they're criminals, but they're attacking Jews everywhere.
Well, you know,
It's sick.
don't forget, people that aren't our age weren't around in 1948 like we were when Israel was founded. Some don't even believe the Holocaust ever existed. And
Yeah.
so they have such a short-term view on things. I just don't understand it. I just don't see it.
Well, we've talked, you and I have both talked on this subject through our first few podcasts, and that subject being the fact that history is not being taught in the classroom, whether we're talking about grade school through high school or at the college university level, certainly not being taught as it was taught for our generation. And where it's being taught, it's revisionism at its worst. I mean, they're rewriting history to suit the political agendas of the ideologues. And so history is becoming, it's grounded in Marxism and radical liberalism, and it's almost unrecognizable from what you and I know to be truth. And you just cited one of the most egregious examples, and that is the denial of the Holocaust. I mean, what evidence do you need? Patton's Third Army found the death camps. Eisenhower visited the death camps. They made the German citizens who lived in proximity to the death camps go in and remove the bodies and begin the burials. I mean, you can't deny it.
Well, you know that your comment about Marxism was interesting, because I don't know if I talked about it last week or whatever, but I had always wondered, what is critical race theory? You know, being in a mixed marriage, you know, I don't really think about those things that much. But there was a fantastic article, as usual, from Hillsdale College explaining it to me, and basically it was Marxism. It was equity versus equality, and it was basically Marxist. Now that's interesting, because I got a call from yours and my buddy who claims we're in the middle of a communist revolution. What the hell is going on?
Joe Biden has endorsed critical race theory. And I'll give you kind of a layman's view of it as opposed to an academic view of it. From a layman's point of view, it's teaching our young people why they should hate our country. And that's what radical leftism is all about. I mean, there's no love for America. They've, as Biden said in running for the presidency from his basement, he wanted to fundamentally change America. And Biden, by the way, has never had an original thought in his life. I mean, he probably needed a cue card to ask Jill to marry him. That what Biden is running on is Obama's agenda. And I believe, and I've said this before, that there's a shadow government at work. That's why Obama, when he left office after 2 terms in the White House, didn't go back to Chicago or didn't move elsewhere. I mean, he has luxurious homes all over God's kingdom, including in your neck of the woods. But his base camp is right there in Washington, D.C. And that man is pulling the levers, and Biden is dutifully following what he's being told. He is a captive of the left. And the left really isn't any different now than it was back in the era of J. Edgar Hoover. You know, when the Communist Party had made forays into a number of areas of government, the movie industry, etc. So I believe it's underway. I saw a video that I posted on my Facebook page today. Jesse Waters of Waterworld, and he talked on this subject, and I would suggest to anyone that they find a copy of this monologue, because he talks about, and I'll try to synthesize it. He basically says the Democrats never fix a problem. They're clueless about how to fix things. And most of the Democrats elected into office have no prior experience working in any, whether it's the service industry, manufacturing, being an officer in the armed forces like you were. I mean, they don't know how to fix things. All they know how to do is to complain.
But
Complain.
But how did we go from things swimmingly moving along, and all of a sudden we have this resurgence of Marxism, which history has proven never worked? I mean, what's the hook?
I don't know if I know what the hook is. A bit by hook, I think what you're saying is what is supposed to be the benefit.
Yes.
I don't even think the Marxists know what the benefit is. They can't make a case for socialism because it's never worked. They can't make a case for communism in its purest form because it's never worked. But what they can make a case to their fellow rabid leftists is that if they pound away at everything right about this country, if they pound away at the American founding, if they call our founding fathers racist slaveholders, and demean those great intelligent men and the founding documents of this country, they're going to cause an uproar and bring down institutions. And that's good enough for them. It's like an arsonist taking joy in watching a building burn down. There's no hook for him. He just likes to burn things down. And I think that's what leftists are all about.
So what is the solution? How do we move forward from here?
Well, I'd say three things off the top of my head, none of them easy. Number one, we have to do something about our college university system. I mean, it's a training ground for leftists. Two, we have to restore journalism in this country. The best way to start is to turn off the TV. I, for one, do not watch Fox News anymore and haven't for about a year. Now, I think I've said before, on occasion, I'll watch Tucker Carlson. And I just mentioned that I watched this monologue of Jesse Waters, but I don't turn into the nightly Fox News Brett Baier. I sure won't watch Chris Wallace. Fox News has changed. You'll never get me to watch any of the network news. I know you don't watch network news, not in this country.
No, I watch NHK from Japan, and I watch BBC.
Well, that would be a prescription that I would offer, that as long as we read and condone the liberal media in what passes for journalism and is anything but, it'll continue. And then the third thing, the biggest thing of all, to me, so simple that it defies imagination, is what possesses people to vote the way they do. You can't even say that they're voting out of self-interest, other than illegals who vote, who want to stay on the public dole and have that broad safety net of services that you and I pay for. But how has the Democratic Party advanced civil rights in the Black cause? I mean, the Civil Rights Bill was not something that the Republican Party opposed. I don't think people quite understand the history or the strong influence of the KKK in the Democratic Party. I mean,
Yeah, but
remember
you know-
Senator Byrd of West Virginia?
Yeah, but see, on the flip side, the Republican Party is in such disarray, and they've become as bad on the other side as the Democrats are on whichever side.
I do not disagree at all, Dick. And I do not regard myself and haven't for, I'm talking about, pick a number, the last 10 years, a Republican. I am a conservative. Unfortunately, oftentimes the lesser of two evils is a Republican candidate versus a Democrat. But even when I vote for a Republican, I'm not voting for a Republican in the sense that I believe the GOP is the be all and the end all, and that the Democrats are the venal party. I mean, they both get in bed together. It's incredible. I mean, John Cornyn here in Texas, the senior senator out of Texas, is already working to cross the aisle to develop what in his mind would be a satisfactory compromise on the Second Amendment, on gun control. A Republican. And this is the guy who every 6 years, when he runs for re-election, suddenly runs ads like he's the greatest conservative since sliced bread. I'm an admirer and a strong supporter of Ted Cruz, the junior senator, but certainly not of John Cornyn. And we all know, I mean, we all know about the rhinos, Republican in name only. I mean, Mitt Romney is probably the classic example. So I agree with you. I think on too many issues, the parties are almost one and the same thing.
Yeah, true. Okay.
You know, the Constitution of the United States never prescribed political parties.
Yeah. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. What do you want as your last comment? I don't have a last comment other than the Israeli Hamas thing, which I flat ass don't understand.
I guess my last comment would be, and I hearken back to, I took constitutional law at Claremont, where we both went to college. And the famous case of Plessy versus Ferguson, this past week, that egregious majority decision with only one dissenting vote on the Supreme Court celebrated, in a manner of speaking, its 125th anniversary. It was eventually overruled, thank God, by Brown versus Board of Education, but Plessy versus Ferguson basically codified the concept of separate but equal. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, you can't possibly fathom what the Supreme Court did in saying, in so many words, that as long as Blacks, minorities had separate but equal facilities, as an example, that all was well in the country. And what my final comment is we've gotten way past that. But what the Democratic Party is doing, and the idiot mayor of Chicago comes to mind. He's decided this past week that hereafter, all of her press conferences will allow only journalists of color to be in the room. In other words, no more white reporters can ask her questions. This is Lori Lightfoot of Chicago. I could, if we had time and we don't, I could cite dozens of examples, particularly in academia, where whites are being excluded from clubs on campus, from certain seminars. It's just unbelievable that we've come full circle, and now we have people, and amazingly, minorities that are seeking to invoke what was invoked in Plessy versus Ferguson, that they should have separate but equal clubs and fraternities and athletic teams, and on it goes. This country, I still hearken back to Martin Luther King. He said he wanted someday for his children that people be judged by the content of the character, not the pigment of the skin. I couldn't agree more with that. And yet there's this huge racial divide. And now in the past couple of weeks, now we see the Jewish community under attack. And in many instances, the people being described by the media as pro-Palestinian that are attacking the Jews are Black people. If anybody should understand and be empathetic to minority status and the kind of horrific things that bad people can do to good people, it ought to be Blacks. But now the Jews are being persecuted yet again. And I'm glad you brought it up.
And don't forget the anti-Asian sentiment that's developing.
That's exactly, yep.
But I don't want to go there now until I discuss it more with my wife, who loves an article you sent from the National Geographic. So let's talk about that next week.
Okay.